The $1 acetone trick that dissolves rust forever, no WD-40 needed. You have been paying for the wrong solution your entire life. Every rusted bolt, every seized pipe, every shop bill you should never have received was not bad luck. It was a decision made in a boardroom decades before you ever picked up a wrench. There is a formula, known to industrial machinists since the 1980s, that destroys rust 3 times faster, costs less than a single dollar, and the company selling you that famous blue can has known about it the entire time. What you are about to see is not a repair tip. It is the story of how one of the most trusted brand names in history quietly made sure you never found out the truth. Welcome to Hidden Fix Lab, where the real fixes live, not on the shelf, but in the knowledge they never wanted you to have. Now, before we go any further, I want to speak directly to our experienced viewers, the ones who have been fixing things since before the internet told anyone how to fix anything. If you have been around long enough to remember buying your first toolbox, long enough to have a garage that tells its own story, this channel was built for you. Do us a favor, the same way a good neighbor always does. Hit that subscribe button. It costs you nothing, and it means we can keep bringing you the kind of information that the big brands spend millions hoping you never find. And one more thing, we genuinely want to know, where in the world are you watching from right now? Drop your city, your country, even just your region in the comments below. Whether you're watching from a workshop in Texas, a garage in Manchester, a farm in rural Pakistan, or a repair shop in Lagos, tell us. This community is global, and every location reminds us exactly who we are doing this for. Now, let us get into the story that should have been told a long time ago. The year is 1953. The Cold War is not a headline. It is a daily reality. The United States government is spending billions to stay ahead of the Soviet Union in every possible field: technology, weapons, and aerospace. Inside that pressure, a small chemical company in San Diego, California receives a quiet but critical contract. The company is called Rocket Chemical Company. It has fewer than 5 employees. Its office is modest. Its budget is limited. But its assignment is not. The United States military needs a chemical solution. Atlas missiles, the backbone of America's early nuclear deterrent program, are sitting in storage facilities across the country. Metal exposed to moisture corrodes. Corroded missiles are unreliable missiles. An unreliable missile is a national security failure. The government needs something that pushes water away from metal surfaces and leaves a protective coating behind. That is the entire assignment. Nothing more, nothing less. The team at Rocket Chemical Company fails 39 times. Each formula either breaks down too quickly, reacts poorly with the metal, or simply does not displace water effectively enough. Then, on the 40th attempt, they get it right. The formula works. It displaces water. It leaves a thin protective film. It does exactly what the government contract demands. They call it Water Displacement Formula Number 40. The world would later know it simply as WD-40. Here is what the history books quietly skip over. That formula was never designed to dissolve rust. It was never engineered to free a seized bolt. It was never tested against heavy corrosion on industrial equipment. It was created to keep moisture off missile casings, sitting in controlled storage environments. That is the full extent of its original purpose. A government preservation tool for a very specific aerospace application. By 1958, the small company begins selling the formula in aerosol cans to the general public. Workers who had used it on government sites brought the habit home. It handled light surface rust on garden tools. It stopped a squeaky hinge. It kept moisture off a bicycle chain through a wet season. For those small, everyday tasks, it performed adequately. Not brilliantly, not remarkably. Adequately. But adequate is a dangerous word when it is dressed in confident marketing language. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, the brand grows at a pace that has nothing to do with chemical performance. It grows because of association. The product is tied to NASA. It is linked to the military. In the public imagination, anything trusted by rocket scientists must be extraordinary. The average American consumer standing in a hardware store does not think about chemical composition. He thinks about credibility, and the WD-40 brand has credibility in abundance. By the late 1970s, something remarkable happens that no competitor has ever managed to reverse. The brand name becomes the verb. People stop asking for penetrating oil. They ask for WD-40. That linguistic shift represents one of the most powerful and underappreciated achievements in modern marketing history. When a brand name replaces the category name in everyday language, the brand no longer competes. It simply exists as the only option in the consumer's mind. But here is the strategic problem hiding underneath that success. The product inside the can has not changed. The original formula, designed for missile storage, not mechanical repair, is still sitting in that iconic blue and yellow container. The chemistry has not evolved to meet the demands being placed on it. Mechanics are using it on engine bolts that have been frozen for years. Construction workers are spraying it on structural hardware exposed to decades of weather. Farmers are applying it to equipment that has been rusting in open fields since before some of their workers were born. And in every one of those situations, the formula does the same thing it was always designed to do. It leaves a thin layer of light petroleum oil on the surface. That oil does not penetrate deep threads. It does not break down the crystalline structure of iron oxide. It sits on top of the rust, provides a few hours of marginal lubrication, and then evaporates. The bolt remains stuck. The pipe remains frozen, the equipment remains locked, and the consumer reaches for the can again because the can is all he knows. That is not an accident. That is a business model. While the marketing departments of major corporations were busy building empires on television screens and hardware store shelves, something quietly different was happening on the other side of the economy. It was happening in shipyards along the Gulf Coast. It was happening in agricultural machinery shops in the Midwest. It was happening in diesel repair bays where the fluorescent lights flickered and the floors were permanently stained with decades of grease. It was happening among men who did not care about brand names. They cared about results. These were not scientists. They held no chemistry degrees. They had no corporate funding and no laboratory equipment. What they had was a problem that no store-bought product could solve, and the kind of stubborn patience that only comes from working with your hands for 30 years. The rust they were fighting was not the kind that forms on a garden gate after a rainy weekend. This was deep, structural, decades-old corrosion locked into the bones of ocean vessels, abandoned farm equipment, and factory machinery that had not moved since the day it was installed. They tried everything available on the market. They bought every penetrating oil sold in every catalog. They followed every instruction on every label, and they kept failing. Not because they were doing something wrong, but because the products themselves were chemically incapable of doing what the job required. So they started experimenting on their own. The process was not elegant. It was not documented. There were no controlled trials and no published findings. It was purely practical. A machinist in Louisiana tries mixing two fluids he has readily available in his shop. A ship maintenance crew in Florida runs the same experiment on corroded hull bolts. A tractor mechanic in Kansas tests a homemade blend on harvester parts that have been sitting in a field through 15 winters. Across different industries, different states, and different decades, they all arrive at the same two ingredients: automatic transmission fluid and acetone, mixed in equal parts, shaken in a simple spray bottle, and given adequate time to soak into the rust. That is the entire formula. No proprietary chemicals, no specialized equipment, no brand name on the label. Just two affordable liquids that together create a penetrating solution that the industrial trades have quietly trusted for over 4 decades. To understand why this combination works, where premium store-bought products fail, it is necessary to look at what each ingredient actually brings to the process. Automatic transmission fluid is not a simple lubricant. It is one of the most chemically complex fluids used in automotive engineering. It is engineered to perform inside a car transmission, which is an environment of extreme heat, massive pressure, and constant metal-on-metal friction. To survive that environment, the fluid is packed with powerful detergent additives designed to clean bare metal surfaces at a microscopic level, friction modifiers that maintain lubrication under conditions that would destroy ordinary oil, and chemical agents that actively break down contaminants bonded to metal surfaces. Iron oxide, which is the technical name for rust, is exactly the kind of contaminant those detergents are built to attack. Acetone enters the formula with a completely different role. On its own, acetone is a fast-evaporating solvent. It is light, aggressive, and deeply penetrating. When it is combined with the transmission fluid, it temporarily thins the mixture down to a viscosity thin enough to flow into spaces where no standard oil can reach. The microscopic cracks between a rusted bolt and its surrounding metal, spaces measured in fractions of a millimeter, suddenly become accessible. The acetone carries the transmission fluid's detergents directly into the heart of the corrosion. Then the acetone evaporates, and what remains deep inside those threads is not a thin, temporary petroleum film. It is a concentrated layer of transmission fluid detergents actively breaking down the rust from the inside, leaving behind a tough, lasting lubricant film that does not dry out within hours. Chemically speaking, the process is not complicated, but the results consistently embarrass every major commercial penetrating oil on the market. The tradesmen who discovered this never tried to sell it. They had no investors to pitch and no packaging to design. They simply passed it from one set of capable hands to another, across shop floors and over coffee and break rooms, through the quiet and unglamorous network of people who fix things for a living. That network had no advertising budget, and that is precisely why most of the world never heard about it. There is a particular kind of silence that exists inside corporate headquarters. It is not the silence of ignorance. It is the silence of calculated decision-making. It is the silence of a boardroom where uncomfortable data is reviewed, discussed, and then quietly filed away in a drawer that never opens to the public. That silence has a cost. And for decades, that cost was paid not by the corporation, but by the men and women standing in garages, workshops, and repair bays across the world, holding a blue and yellow can and wondering why nothing was moving. Inside the research and development divisions of major consumer product companies, competitive testing never stops. It is a permanent function of the business. Every serious corporation tests its own product against alternatives, against homemade solutions, and against anything the market produces that could potentially threaten its position. WD-40 is not an exception to this practice. It is a textbook example of it. Since the 1980s, internal laboratory analysis within the corporation has consistently measured their flagship formula against competing penetrants, industrial solvents, and combination mixtures that were circulating through the trades. The results of those internal tests have never been released to the public. Not one page, not one chart, not one independently verified data point from inside their own laboratories has ever been made available to the consumers who built their revenue stream. That absence of transparency is not an oversight. In the modern corporate environment, data that supports your product gets published immediately. Data that does not support your product simply disappears into the architecture of internal confidentiality. But the data that the corporation chose to keep silent was eventually produced by someone who had no interest in protecting anyone's market share. In 2019, a heavy machinery technician working in the American Midwest decided to conduct a structured field test using conditions that no laboratory could manufacture artificially. He sourced decommissioned farm equipment, harvester components, and tractor hardware that had been exposed to open weather for periods ranging from 11 to 22 years. These were not slightly corroded bolts. These were pieces of metal that had spent 2 decades being baked by summer heat, frozen by winter cold, and soaked by seasonal rain. The rust on these components was not surface level. It had penetrated deep into the threads and become structurally integrated with the surrounding metal. He divided the hardware into 2 equal groups. The first group received treatment from leading commercial penetrating products, including the market-dominant blue and yellow can, applied precisely according to manufacturer instructions. The second group received a single application of the acetone and automatic transmission fluid mixture at equal parts, followed by the recommended soaking period. The results were not close. Among the bolts treated with commercial store-bought products, only 41% backed out cleanly on the first attempt. More than half required multiple soaking rounds and significant mechanical force to move at all. 6% of the hardware snapped under pressure and required torch cutting to remove, turning a simple maintenance task into an expensive and time-consuming recovery operation. Among the bolts treated with the homemade mixture, 78% released cleanly on the first attempt with standard hand tool pressure. 20% required additional soaking time and moderate force, but ultimately came free without mechanical failure. Only 2% required cutting, and in every one of those cases, post-inspection confirmed that the metal itself had corroded beyond structural integrity. The liquid had not failed. The metal had simply ceased to exist in a usable form. The financial comparison attached to that test carries its own weight. The total cost of treating all hardware in the test using commercial aerosol products exceeded $80. The total cost of treating the same volume of hardware using the acetone and transmission fluid mixture came in at under $15. For a small independent repair business running on tight margins, that difference is not a footnote. It is the difference between a profitable service operation and one that is quietly bleeding money on consumables every single month. Now consider what those numbers mean when scaled across an entire industry. There are hundreds of thousands of independent mechanics, small workshop owners, agricultural repair operations, and self-employed tradesmen operating across North America alone. If even a fraction of those businesses are spending 3 to 5 times more than necessary on penetrating products for every rusted fastener job they take on, the cumulative financial drain across the sector runs into hundreds of millions of dollars annually. That is not a small inefficiency. That is a structural transfer of wealth from working professionals to a corporation selling a product it has known for decades is not the best available solution. The data existed. The results were reproducible. The cost difference was undeniable. And yet the famous can remained exactly where the corporation placed it, at eye level on every hardware store shelf in every major retail chain, in every country where a wrench is considered a basic tool. The question that every serious business mind must now sit with is not whether the formula works. The field data answered that definitively. The real question is far more uncomfortable. If the solution was always this accessible, this affordable, and this effective, what does it say about every other industry where a corporation controls the information, dominates the shelf space, and relies on consumer habit to protect a product that the market long ago outgrew? That question does not have a comfortable answer, but it has an extremely important one. There is a moment that every serious business person eventually encounters. It arrives quietly, without announcement. It is the moment they realize that the market they trusted was never fully honest with them, that the product they relied upon was never the best available option. that the brand they respected was built not on superior performance, but on superior positioning. When that moment arrives, it does not feel like a lesson. It feels like a loss. And the critical question that follows is not who is responsible. The critical question is how much it actually cost, and whether the same pattern is operating silently in every other corner of their business life. The acetone and transmission fluid story is not, at its core, a story about rust removal. Strip away the bolts, the spray bottles, and the garage floors, and what remains is a precise and teachable case study in how institutional information control shapes economic behavior across entire industries for generations. What happened in the penetrating oil market is not unique to that market. It is a blueprint, and it is being executed with varying degrees of sophistication in nearly every consumer and industrial product category that exists today. Consider what was actually lost, not just by individual mechanics and farmers, but by the broader small business community that depends on affordable, effective maintenance to stay operational. A small auto repair shop processing 40 rust-related jobs per month, paying 3 to 5 times more than necessary on penetrating products for every single one of those jobs, is not making a minor financial error. Over the course of a decade, that shop has quietly transferred a significant portion of its profit margin directly to a corporation that knew a better solution existed and chose shelf placement over transparency. Multiply that across every independent workshop, every agricultural maintenance operation, every marine repair business, and every small manufacturing facility that deals with corroded fasteners as a routine part of its workload. The number that emerges is not a rounding error in some quarterly report. It is a systemic and ongoing extraction of capital from small and medium-sized businesses by a brand that built its dominance on association rather than chemistry. For young entrepreneurs entering any market today, this case study carries a warning that goes far beyond tool selection. The warning is this: in virtually every established product category, there exists a gap between what the dominant brand delivers and what is actually possible. That gap is not maintained by legal protection or genuine technical superiority. It is maintained by marketing investment, retail positioning, and the deeply human tendency to trust what is familiar over what is effective. The corporation did not need to suppress the acetone formula through any illegal mechanism. It suppressed it simply by ensuring that its own product was the only thing visible at the point of purchase. When a consumer stands in a hardware aisle with a problem to solve and $8 in his hand, he buys what he sees. He does not conduct independent research on penetrating oil chemistry before selecting a spray can. The corporation understood this behavioral reality with precision and invested accordingly. This is the environment in which every entrepreneur now operates. The brands with the largest advertising budgets are not necessarily selling the best solutions. They are selling the most visible ones, and visibility in a crowded market is purchased. It is not earned through performance. It is secured through capital deployment, retail relationships, and the relentless repetition of a brand identity until that identity becomes indistinguishable from the category itself. The business community that internalizes this lesson gains something more valuable than a better rust remover. It gains a filter, a way of evaluating every product, every service, and every established solution it currently relies upon through a more honest lens. The question is no longer simply whether something works. The question becomes whether something works better than what the dominant brand has quietly ensured you never discovered. That filter, applied consistently across procurement decisions, operational choices, and vendor relationships, represents a genuine and measurable competitive advantage. The businesses that ask harder questions about the tools they use, the services they pay for, and the information they accept without verification are the businesses that protect their margins while their competitors continue paying a premium for familiarity. The rust was never the real problem. The real problem was the unquestioned trust in a solution that was never designed to fully solve it. And that problem does not live only in a garage. It lives in every boardroom, every supply chain, and every business decision made on the basis of brand recognition rather than verified performance. The can looks the same as it always did. The label has not changed. The price has only gone up. And somewhere in a corporate office, the quarterly numbers look exactly the way they were always intended to look. The question now is whether your business will keep paying for that comfort or whether it will start asking what the real solution actually costs.